I just think it's just a sign of the vulgarity of the place and the presence. That Shaman is just a sort of useful idiot, really, for the Kremlin to use and abuse and throw him aside. They wouldn't be out of place in the Berlin in the 1940s. When you're talking about my struggle or my battle, it's like everyone went, oh, hold on, that's exactly like the Nazis. So this whole idea that you're fighting fascism while dressing up your pop star like a Nazi is just like there's dissonance in their head, thinking it'd go down with the kids. Why does Putin use celebrities? Why do dictators use celebrities? And the Soviets did the same as well. It's because they lack legitimacy. So they don't get legitimacy through the ballot box. And they're worried about that. That eats them up. So my people love me. So, they give themselves 85% in elections, and they need celebrities, entertainers, sports stars, popular people, pop musicians, cultural figures, opera singers, and even Westerners, to sort of burnish their popularity, their image, to reflect the glory onto the great leader. And so they get the legitimacy from the popular acclaim of these people. And then these people are popular, therefore the public go, well, if Shaman likes Putin, then that must be a good thing. So I think, then so Putin, it's a win-win, really. Putin gets the glory from these celebrities, and the celebrities get access and money and political advantage and advancement within the dictatorship. So, and of course, those who don't get it, don't play along, get isolated, persecuted, denounced, driven into exile, or subject to, fictitious investigation. Just on Shaman then, I think he was an absolute nobody. He was a failed pop star, big boy band member, singing cover songs. And then suddenly he's become sort of, well, I will say it's like sort of a Nazi version of Rylan, because that sort of, he's absolutely everywhere. So he gets from obscurity and he's adopted this sort of extreme militaristic, fascistic persona with his songs, I'm Russian. And obviously it's a ploy. It's deliberately done by the Kremlin. They need somebody for the youth to spread their message to the young, and these sort of patriotic music and imagery, and it's very aligned with the wartime propaganda. So he's gone from being a nobody. I don't want to compare him to Ryler, but that sort of person who's literally plucked from nowhere, obscurity, given the makeover, looks like as the Times said, combination of an SS officer crossed with a boy band member, and then he gets money, and then the Kremlin use him and his music to spread their ideas of being under attack and militaristic, and Putin being the big man defending Russia. He's the Kremlin's idea of a popular young person. We're down with the kids. That meme, the Harry Enfield thing. We're down with the kids, bruv. And a lot of his comments, if you see the comments on YouTube about him, is the Russian youth are extremely rude about him as a sort of state-sponsored pop star. Of course, a lot of the pop stars have fled into exile, rappers or big cool foreign agents. So, yeah, it's sort of state-sponsored Nazi pop music, really. She's a Nepo baby because her mother was a senator. She's ultra-conservative. So in the mood of a time when everything's conservative, she's ultra-conservative. She's a narc as well. You know what that means. She issues denouncements of all sorts of people, takes people to court for, un-Russian values or non-conservative, non-traditional values, LGBT stuff as well. So she's equally ghastly as Shaman. They are a gruesome twosome. They are an appalling pair. And I think for her, whether it's a true love match or whether they're just using each other, I think it's quite an interesting discussion. I mean, she's considerably older than he is. She's, I think, wants to use the war and the sort of fever of patriotism to advance herself. I think she, they want to get political advancement, so apparently they've set up a political party. The chances they might end up in the Duma, making themselves richer and more famous at the expense of dead Ukrainians and dead Russian soldiers. So this is, as I said here, I think they're perfectly made for each other. Two symbols of the degenerate, corrupt, and fascist modern Russia, and militarist Russia, modern Russia. They're they wouldn't be out of place in Berlin in the 1940s. In that sort of milieu, shall we say, of. I think they even got married in Donetsk to ram it home, surrounded by Chechens or something. I used to say that when I was in Russia, that everything, there's an expression my Russian website used to have, that everything is worse today than it was yesterday. So the ending democracy, the rigging the elections, the changing the constitutions, the poisoning and murder of political opponents, the censorship, invading Russia, invading Ukraine. But I think things really deteriorated after 2022. And you can see the ascent of people like Shaman and Mizulina is in, as Russia goes like that, these people shit floats to the top. To be honest, which you could use that in the sun, but they do. They're lots like turds floating of society, floating to the top, or the scum. Basically, scum always floats to the top. So, and I think it also points to a really deep malaise in Russian society, that these are the people the system's putting forward. I mean, I think certainly Mizulina has raged against rap music. So Shaman's pop Nazism, Nazi pop is sort of in the vogue of the time, about sacrifice and martial music, and it echoes, I think, some other sort of narratives and themes of music for the Great Patriotic War and Second World War. So I think things which are non-traditional, sexuality, music, people of colour, ethnic minorities, is down, and sort of white Christian nationalistic Nazi pop is on the way up. And I think, and also because rap is, it's got a sort of non-traditional urban type of background, non-conformist, shall we say. It doesn't fit into the heavily conservative traditional direction Russia's going. It's turning inwards, eating itself, really. Shaman is he's just an instrument for the Kremlin, and he'll be dropped as soon as they don't need him anymore. So, for example, if there was the end of the war came out, and Russia declares victory, whatever that is, whether it's Donbass or whatever, and then they don't need rabid pro-Russian, pro-war voices anymore. It has to be given the old, dropped like a hot potato. So I mean, I think his like a sort of his life expectancy, or sorry, his cultural life expectancy is limited. I mean, he would like to play it in for long term, but we've seen before people, who ascend quickly and then just like gone. Because he's always going to be an outsider in the elite. He's never going to be a proper person elite. Even this Mizulina got some traction. She's only where she is because her mother was a senator. So I think they both want to play this long, but I think the chances are they won't be significant players. I think because the rest of the part of the elite, they can butt up against their own interests and their own children and how it works. It's a massive struggle for power. When you talk about my struggle or my battle, it's like everyone went, oh, hold on, that's exactly like the Nazis. So this whole idea that you're fighting fascism while dressing up your pop star like a Nazi is just like there's dissonance in their head, thinking it'd go down with the kids. I think the other thing is we underestimate Russians' ability to discern sometimes. The Kremlin does the stuff, they promote this guy, and therefore Russians love him. I think it's the opposite, actually. I think he's a laughing stock, which is why, again, I think is long-term cultural longevity is limited. And like we found with Prigozhin, when Prigozhin was useful, he was tolerated by the system. That's the moment he stopped being useful, he was killed. So I know I'm not saying that they're going to kill off Shaman, but I think in terms of terminating his career or just pulling away his access, his contracts, and his his ability to, and also it's just a bit boring, isn't it? It's like 10 years time he's still singing. He's going to be in his 40s, singing songs about a war which is going to be over. Putin's probably going to be dead by that stage. So it's like, well, mate, he might be okay on the Housewife's Favourite or some sort of nostalgia show or Golden Oldies or something. But just pop is like that. It just changes so quickly. That there's a guy called, during the Soviet period, a guy called Kobzon, Joseph Kobzon, and he used to sing these sort of patriotic songs, Soviet wartime songs. I saw him in Kiev when I was there. He came to the I was invited by the Russians to this patriotic concert. He was singing. This guy like massive makeup, and he's still singing. And I was him. That's him. Yeah. But as he got older and older, he became more and more strange looking. And I remember asking Russians in Moscow what they thought about Kobzon. They was like, "Who?" It's some old guy. The regime's using him to sort of stir up sort of patriotic spirit. And I think that's probably going to be Shaman's fate. Actually, it's become sort of an odd, historical relic.